fuck off. And welcome to Inframe Podcast. On today's episode, we have our very first guest, Jonathan Sunio. Jonathan is actually related to me through my fiance, and he actually helped us with a project over this past summer. And he's actually not left us since. So tell me I'm wrong. Welcome to the Inframe Podcast. Of course, I'm Twayne. This is Zeik.
Hello.
And
Hello.
Today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Jonathan's experience, a little bit about photography workflow, creative workflow, perfectionism, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And especially when you're getting started, how that can sort of weigh on you a bit, and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of the times, you've got an idea, right? You want to create or produce something, and like a lot of the times you're like, okay, this needs to be top notch. This needs to be 100%, whatever. And what we're going to talk about today is really just how to try to execute that without getting too far into your head. I feel like we all have experienced that at some point or another where we're just like, all right, we're just too much of a, I don't want to say burden, but you know what I mean? It's a lot. So, yeah.
So, I mean, it depends. It depends, I think, on certain things, like where you are as an artist. If you're either picking up the camera for the first time, or you've been given sort of a campaign, or you might have an idea for a creative, and depending on the project, some of your creatives might be very sort of adapt and figure things out while you're on set, and other things you might plan a little bit more to the T. And really, I think executing, when it comes to executing those creatives, I feel like sometimes you can kind of trip over your own feet sometimes if you are a little bit too prepared. I don't want to say too prepared, but like you're trying to basically picture how every frame's gonna look. Yeah. And I think that can sort of get you in a hole a little bit.
Well, I mean, before we get too far into the hole, John, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself, or not us, but we know who you
tell
are.
Our audience.
But introduce yourself. Talk a little bit about what you do, your sort of interests in this creative process, not the creative process, but being a creative.
Actually, my name is Steve Jobs. I'm wearing a...
You're both wearing black, and I'm chilling here in this bright ass.
Yeah, you got blue. What is this? Did you not get the memo?
No, I didn't, apparently.
Oh, man. And snap. Yeah. And that's right.
God.
Okay.
And
scene 2. Action. Okay, so yeah, my name is John. My day job is human resources, but I would say my passion would be photography. I started off second year of university, and then basically I started with portraits, and then that kind of, I lost passion for that, so I went to landscapes. I thought it was easier.
Okay.
So I keep on going back and forth with it, but right now I would say it's a combo of both. And in terms of gear, it's going back and forth again. It's from Canon to Nikon to Canon to Fuji, back to Canon, and then possibly back to Nikon. But obviously that
episode.
Yeah, refer to our gas episode. Oh,
yes.
Jeez.
Was that episode 3?
I don't know, whichever episode 2, 3. I don't remember.
That might have been. Yeah,
it's been a while, but
I love that we're on episode 5. I can't remember previous episodes. But yes, we did refer to gas on one of our previous episodes.
Yeah. But yeah, so today we did a photo shoot with Rob, who is one of the actors on the short film that we did over the summer. Generally, I thought it went well, but the thing with film, obviously, you need to be patient with it and get your results back. And sometimes I can't really be the most patient person. So in terms of, workflow and, talking about perfectionism within photography, as we've discussed, but as you guys don't know, I like to plan a lot for my shoots. And I read a book from this photographer named Finn on Instagram.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about storytelling and being more intentional with your shots. And I feel like in general, I have been intentional with my shots, but ever since reading the book about storytelling, it just made me feel like I should pay more attention to everything, like, what the character is wearing, or, what is in frame, what to keep out of frame and stuff. And then for the shoot, I was thinking like, okay, kind of relating it back to COVID, how can I evoke some sort of emotion where, when people are tired during COVID, to say, hey, how can I revisit something that you were once passionate about? So for Rob, he was saying that he wanted to get back into playing the guitar. And I thought that it was a great idea. And kind of starting off with the photos of, him listening to music as that motivator, translating into him brainstorming notes, and then finally actually playing the guitar. Now, we had all that planned, right? But as we've discussed, like, it's always good to have a general idea, but to go into photo shoots with an open mind. And that's why I learned from this photo shoot specifically, because as a planner and for someone who identifies himself as a perfectionist, I want to get those photos. I don't want to, disappoint not only myself, but like other people involved on the shoot. Right? Because at first I was like, okay, like if these don't come out well, then I'm wasting everyone's time. However, just changing the mindset on this shoot and, going forward, like I do think it's beneficial to have a growth mindset, because if the photos don't turn out well, then you learn from it. And, you were taking notes on the shoot of my settings, right? And if it doesn't turn out well, then I'll learn for the next one.
Yeah, I think it's super, super, super important to, be able to have that adaptability when it comes to shoots, especially if you're, early on in sort of your pursuit of your passion, whether it be photography or videography. And Zeik will say it, is just allow yourself for that experimentation, right? And there, if you set up a creative shoot, there really is no pressure, I would say. That's just the way I think and feel. There is no pressure to produce this superior art form that is really going to, be your defining work. If it ends up being that, great. That's amazing, you were able to execute your vision and that kind of stuff. But I think, if you go in with sort of a relaxed mindset, a general idea, and allow it to sort of shape into something that happens during that day or that time frame for however long you shoot, I think that can be fun too. Because then if you're comfortable, the people on set that are comfortable, you just kind of vibe off each other, and then you might notice something that you may not have noticed if you only decided to stick to your plan,
Yeah.
The thing I will say about that though is, so going to this, I was playing a lot, but on the shoot itself, it was like, I felt like it flowed well. Like I wasn't too concerned with, like, for the most part, I felt like I wasn't too concerned about getting so-and-so shots, even though I described it to Rob.
Yeah.
I was like, I took it a little bit easier. And then on the way here, like, I was a little bit tense because we missed a couple exits on the way to the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Toronto, so I mean,
chill. Yeah.
Either way,
I mean, I think it's hard for, especially, you'd consider yourself like fairly new to at least film photography, right?
Yes. Film photography, I got into the beginning of this year. Right.
And like, the thing with film, it's like you said, you have to be patient. But in my mind, at least for me, this is what I want others to take away from it too, is that it's just another tool to acquire an image.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if you're picking up film photography after you've picked up digital photography and you have some sense of what digital photography is, the principles are exactly the same. It's just you don't see your photo right after to tell you if you fucked up or not, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the scary part for sure, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if you know that you can produce a good digital photo, you're just changing the acquisition medium, right? That's really it, or the acquisition tool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, for myself, like, I shoot a lot of film, but, you know, even till this day, like, I'll carry a digital camera with me, and it's sort of a little bit of a backup, like a little bit of a crutch, where I'll shoot some digital, and then like my particular workflow when I'm shooting is I'll shoot some shots on digital, like test shots. So I check my light, I check, you know, composition, I check, you know, how the posing is, and then I show those digital images back to who I'm shooting. So I'm like, all right, this is what you look like, you know, and then there's that safety net.
sure.
And I still do that. Like, you know, there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But film is definitely one of those things where, okay, like, you kind of have to realize you've got those instincts. You've got a particular skill set that you've honed in on, you know? And this is something that we've discussed too, is that in your subconscious, your subconscious mind is constantly looking for things. It's constantly looking for compositions and stuff like that. You might not realize it. And so, yeah, I think film's interesting because you kind of have to rely on your instincts.
100%. 100%. I think it can be very instinctive. And I think for me personally with film, it's like, I'm not bound by anything. It's like I feel so involved when I shoot a film photo. I know it's so cliche to say. It's like, oh, you know, you have to really use your hands to dial in your settings or whatever, and then you go develop it in a dark room or something. I mean, I just think it, in a way, it seems restrictive, but at the same time, it's so freeing because you can turn your mind off to all the features of a camera.
Yeah.
And eye autofocus, or like auto white balance, or bracketing exposures if I didn't nail it. You turn all that sort of technological noise off.
Yeah.
And it's just you, the camera, your creative eye, and the subject in front of you, which I think is like the purest form of making a photo that you can get, I think, at least. And I mean, everyone's digital or everyone's film workflow is different, right? So like, so far for you, John, like, what have you found to be something that you're experimenting with or that you've stuck with, or like what's changed when you first started film to now, or what are some stuff that's like stayed the same in terms of like your workflow?
Well, I will say, like, to kind of piggyback on like one of your comments about differences between digital and film. Digital, you can obviously review the photo right after. Film, you can't. So at least when I first started off, like, I was so concerned, like, oh, how did it turn out? And obviously I'm still kind of like that, but I do have the mindset of like, okay, shoot and move to the next photo.
Yeah.
And that kind of eases my mind in terms of like, okay, like, is this prop not in like where it should be? Or, you know, how my models, like, are they smiling or not when I intended them to be smiling? Right? So in terms of like when I first started until now, like, obviously I'm still learning, right? Going back to like the whole storytelling thing, like, just being more intentional with my shots. I think that's super key. Like, if I could offer any advice for someone like who's just starting out, and keep in mind, I've only done it for what, like 9 months, 10 months, whatever. Just to, like I said, go into it with an open mind, but also be intentional with your shots too. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think it's because, I mean, you're limited by what, 24, 36 exposures per roll.
Plus there's cost too for each shot.
It's definitely nerve-wracking, right? Like, you, like, recently, like, I shot Twayne's engagement photos.
With cameras you never used.
With cameras I barely, if ever, used, right?
Yeah.
And like one of them was a Hasselblad.
They were both Hasselblads.
Well, they're both, but one was like the 500 cm.
Yeah.
Right? And
which
that's 12 shots.
I'm very familiar with. And I know the camera like the back of my hand because it is my camera.
Yeah.
Right.
But me, you know, I have no idea, and it's 12 shots, and I'm used to like 36. I'm used to being able to just let things kind of flow in the moment. And so that was something that was interesting, is picking up a new camera, and, you know, on a shoot, that's also really important. Like, it's an engagement shoot.
Put a lot of trust in this guy.
You want to make sure you get the shots right. And so it's interesting when you change up your tools, or you know, do all this stuff. It's definitely gives you a little bit of freedom to experiment and get creative. There is a definite, you know, there's a lot of pressure that comes with shooting film. You keep learning and you keep growing.
Oh yeah.
Your instincts get honed in when you're shooting film, right? There's times where you'll be like, this doesn't seem right. Like, there's my meter is going off on some weird direction, but you know in the back of your head after shooting a while that, okay, that doesn't seem right. Maybe I gotta check in on this, or double check, or you know, you end up honing in on that specific skill. And that's why I like shooting film. You learn a little bit more about
each time you shoot.
photography.
100%.
Yeah, I'm still learning.
It's so crazy how the medium will surprise you every single time you shoot film.
Yeah.
And I've been shooting film since 2013, 2014. I mean, not a long time. I mean, it was before, I think, the huge resurgence of film in like 2016, 2017, when, you know, everyone was finding their grandfather's camera or something like that. Not to sound like, you know, I was in it before it was cool again, but I mean, it's interesting because I shot some portraits of Jonathan, and I decided to use a filter on film, and filters on film versus digital do very different things.
Yeah.
It's so surprising.
Yeah.
And I threw a glimmer glass on the front of the Hasselblad, and I was like, shit, this really actually flattened out the contrast a lot.
Yeah. You put glimmer glass? I didn't notice.
It was glimmer because I brought back.
I barely noticed, dude.
I brought back. You didn't notice? Or you just being sarcastic?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
This is being sarcastic, bitch. But yeah, like I put glimmer glass in front of that, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And I realized my negatives were super low contrast. I was like, oh, these blacks aren't black. What's going on here? Curves. So, you know, you do that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, now I know what glimmer glass and film looks like. And, you know, you take your notes and you be like, okay, when's a situation where I might like this? Or maybe I could try this with color film and not black and white. What does that look like? And
So about that, you know how, like, so basically I also shot Twayne too. So we edited our photos. Obviously we have a group chat, and, you know, we're comparing styles and trying to align it with vision and perfectionism, right? If you have a set goal in mind, like say, for example, I wanted the photos to come out contrasty.
Yeah.
And when we were comparing it, obviously yours were a lot more contrasty than mine, but I wanted to retain details, you know, within the highlights, and you know, just trying to find that good balance between contrast and, you know.
I will say though, with you had the harder challenge because I was wearing a light jacket. You were completely in dark muted colors already, so all I had to do was make sure that your face was lit.
My socks are white.
And yeah, well, no one's gonna look at your socks.
Bro, I look at my socks.
In your own photos? In your own photos, you look at your socks?
Frame 11, dude.
Bruh.
Okay.
Fucking Quentin Tarantino over here with his feet fetish.
Oh no.
Nike.
But yeah, so like that, but like that's the kind of stuff that I think people only pick up on as they shoot more and more, right? And it's interesting to see, like, we use the same camera, we use the same film, but we had two completely different styles and approaches to the way we shot film.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't just apply for film; it applies for digital photos as well. But I think, you know, the goal for me with that, because I knew it was just like a test for fun, and you were just getting to use the Hasselblad to see how it felt, and you know, if you liked it or not. For me, I just wanted to take 12 good photos.
Yeah.
I didn't care about the story or context that they were taken in. I really didn't. I'll tell you that straight up. I was like, okay, I just want to take 12 good photos. I wasn't trying to tell a story of John walking through this forest that we were in. I was just like, yeah, okay, I think John looks good here. I think the light looks great here.
Yeah.
And if it makes a good image, it makes a good image.
Yeah.
So, and that's also a different workflow, right? You know, if you're I mean, was I unintentional? Not necessarily. I still had the intention of taking those photos, and I just wanted to make sure that I would be happy with them.
Yeah.
But I didn't want the viewer to necessarily be like, oh, I see a clear story between frames 1 and frame 12.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, right? With photography, like, you know, a lot of photographers will have the idea that, oh, this frame has to be cohesive with all the other ones and stuff. For me, when I think of photography, I think like there might be an overlaying theme, but you're sort of capturing specific moments in time. Like, I'm constantly paying attention to the person in front of me and the scene and how those things are playing together. Sometimes you've got light that comes in, and when you're paying attention to that more so than, oh, like I have to tell the story, this frame has to be in sequence from the last one. When you're starting to think about it in terms of moments and think about specific things you want to capture, sometimes it's a fleeting moment. It only appears in a split second or a few seconds, but you know, that's like, okay, that's it. You know, there's times where I'm on a shoot and all of a sudden the sun will come in through the window, right? And I'll see that and I'm like, okay, can you hold that for about like a second? You know, I'll tell them, please hold that. And I'll find composition, I'll capture it. And then after that photo is taken, light's gone. I'm like, all right, let's move on from there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you capture that, sometimes you don't. And I think when you're paying attention more to those fleeting moments, I think that's where you start to capture things versus trying to force a story. Like, it's one thing if you're trying to, you know, like do a montage or something, right, where you're shooting, like sometimes you're shooting an editorial and you want to create that story. You're building that set. But there's other times where you're really just, you've got a camera, you've got someone in front of you, just pay attention. And I think that's pretty key.
Yeah. Just being present, really, I think.
Yeah, being present, for sure.
Because then you like think of something, you're like, oh yeah, let's just do this quickly. And you never know. It's like something you never planned for, but you're like, shit, I love this more than anything else that I planned for, right? So it happens to me all the time. All the time when I take photos. Those are like some of the best photos I've ever taken.
Yeah.
The ones that I just don't plan.
The unintentional ones.
Unintentional. Absolutely unintentional. Like,
But
and I don't know if it's like luck or if it's just I'm able to adapt or what is it? Is like, am I just a lucky photographer? Maybe. I don't know.
It's a little bit of luck
I think
involved in there.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But it's also paying attention to that. Some photographers don't. Right? And that's not luck. That's just you not being present. You're too caught up with this or that or whatever. Like, sometimes things get way too distracting. Right? Like, there's a quote from Walter Mitty, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Great
right?
movie.
And
Great
spoiler
movie.
alert up ahead, but you know, when he finally finds forget the photographer's name in the movie, but he finally finds him and the photographer is looking through his lens. He spotted a snow leopard, which is super rare. Walter goes, you know, are you gonna take the shot? And he just sits back and he goes, sometimes I don't like the distraction of the camera. You kind of take that moment in. And I think as photographers, paying attention, being present, you know, if you are taking the photo, you're choosing to capture that specific moment in time that won't be replicated.
Yeah.
You know? Like, we could be shooting the same scene the same time. We're not going to get the same image. No. You know, and then that's the beauty of photography. Not necessarily just film, but photography in general.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I don't think there's ever a truly perfect image. No. And I think a lot of people get caught with that. They get caught in the perfectionism. They'll pay attention too much in composition. Like, I remember I told John, I was like, hey, look, I was looking over some of the photos that they had taken of each other. And I'm like, look at this one. It has triangles. Look at this one. There's a rule of thirds. And John started going, oh my God, there's triangles in every image.
Yeah, I see triangles all the time on Instagram now.
It ruined, right?
I'm not gonna lie, like.
Yeah.
But see, like,
I'm just kidding.
You know, I don't know if you are.
There's a triangle right there.
You took the triangle thing so seriously, though, in every photo we sent you. And we're like, oh, where are the triangles? I don't see any.
But it's good training for the eye, though, because I generally start off with, like, rule of thirds. And then I can go golden ratio. And triangles, like, I do agree with you. It does add visual interest, and even so on Rob's shoot, I could already see within the frame those triangles that you were talking about. And although we were joking in the moment, like don't try to look too much into it, but during the photo shoot,
it just
I could identify it quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I had Rob kind of on the floor.
Yeah, that's instinct.
Yeah, and I was like, can you put your right leg up? And I'm like, okay, I can already see a triangle right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's just one rule of composition, guys. It's not.
Please don't go around
looking for triangles in nature.
looking
While
for
they might
triangles,
exist.
or go around looking for Illuminati confirmation.
Yeah.
Illuminati confirmed.
yeah, don't join the Bonnie groups.
God.
Oh man.
Bonnie.
Anyways, yeah. So that's the thing, right? Like you can stare at images all you want, look at photo books, galleries, etc. Break it down even.
Yeah.
But all you're doing when you're doing that, like try not to get too caught up. Like realize what the photographer was doing and try to see how you can bring that into your own workflow. And it becomes instinct. Like you don't even think about it. It's just there, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like do this, or you shift your camera ever so slightly and it changes the photo entirely.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like let's just go through it. Like when you're shooting film or when you're shooting photos, like what are you looking for? Like what's your workflow when you approach a scene or you approach someone in a space or in an environment? Like what are you looking at first and what are you trying to gauge?
Yeah. So for me, it's very much like The Lion King, right? Where whatever the light touches, right? Whatever the light touches, your eye immediately goes to that.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Not wrong. So basically, that's the first thing I look at. I'm like, okay, where's the light, right? Where's this light shining? Where's the key? You know, if it's backlit, you know, what's that light doing? And then from there, I'm like, all right, well, the light's clearly there. How do I shift now? You know, is my subject in the right spot? Am I in the right spot? And then I start composing things, right? And then from there, I'm like, all right, now I gotta meter and do all this stuff. Or sometimes the other way, I'll meter first, and I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna like adjust myself. So it's really, for me at least, the most important thing is light. Where's the light hitting? Sometimes that's like the motivation for the entire shot. I'm like, oh man, this light looks so good right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I fall in love with this, like, you know, I can't speak right now. Specific moments. So sometimes someone will sit underneath like a lamp, and I'm like, all right, this light is looking so good, and I need to capture this, right? Tilt your head up or something.
Circa 2016 Zeik. Just lamps.
But yeah, like that shaped a whole mindset when I'm shooting, right? Oh, I'm going to move this lamp here, or I'm going to move this lamp here. And then from lamps, it became like natural light, and it became the motivation for my LED panels or flat or strobes or whatever. So I think light for me. That was a ramble. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What about you, John? Triangles.
Yeah, triangles. It's all triangles, man.
Doritos.
Triangles.
Just
Triangles.
Cool Ranch.
cool. But no, since you've been doing photography for some time, since second year of your university. Actually, same amount of time as I have, actually.
Yeah.
But what's your approach now? Like, would you say that you found to be effective for you?
I would say, at least for portraits, getting my models as comfortable as possible.
Okay. Yeah.
Because for me, I can tell at least the difference between what is a good photo and a great photo in terms of like their emotions.
Sure.
Like I did wedding photography for a year and a half, and I would take out any photos where I was like, okay, like the couples aren't smiling. Like it's a happy day. Like I'm trying to capture, you know, that within the photos. And it would play into like my editing style. Like I used to do like, you know, kind of like the bright and happy mood for photos, like bright and airy. And I think that would work well with, you know, couples smiling. But just to kind of translate it into, you know, my workflow and what I look for now, like for any people I've worked with, I say, as long as you guys are comfortable, I'm good. Like I can give them as much direction in terms of, hey, do you guys want to work with muted colors for your outfits or, you know, whatever. But ultimately, like if they're comfortable with what they're wearing, if they're comfortable within the scene, then I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And it's also building that rapport too,
For sure.
right? Even in between, like, just providing feedback, or like during like shooting as well. Like, I think like, okay, giving them like, positive affirmation, like, hey, you guys are doing a good job.
Yeah.
Right. And it built that confidence
for
within the clients and models.
Yeah.
For sure.
But triangles though.
But triangle.
But triangle.
No, I think that's super important. I think if you have someone who's uncomfortable in
It sets the
front
whole
of
mood
you,
off, man.
Yeah.
if they're
the whole-
uncomfortable,
Yeah.
it changes the photo.
Yeah,
And
100%. And you can see it in the photo.
yeah, your audience immediately senses
Yeah.
that. That's something that like I've noticed with photography is there's a lot of things that happen subconsciously that you can look at a photograph and all of a sudden you're like, you get like a weird feeling or something just by looking at the mood.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely very important. It's getting some like just setting the comfort level for sure. Yeah. What are you, Twayne?
Triangles.
For me,
Golden ratio.
it really depends. It depends on what I'm photographing, I guess. I don't know, because half the time it's light for me. For the most part, I'm looking at light and I'm looking at composition. Usually before the shoot and stuff, I try and get a sense of how they're feeling, and if I have to do some more work when we're actually in person. If they're excited beforehand and they're vibing and we're bouncing ideas off one another, then I usually know it likely will be a smooth ride and they're comfortable. But then sometimes, some people and some clients, if it's portraits or people, they need a little bit more direction, or they need a little bit more confidence, or you try and inject that throughout the day.
Yeah.
If you're shooting with them. But for me personally, depending on the format I'm shooting, I'm thinking differently compositionally. Like if I'm shooting landscape or super wide, I'm thinking about what to include, what to exclude. If I'm shooting the Hasselblad, which is a square frame, my composition changes, which is usually mostly center comp, right? But I would say for the most part, I'm looking at light in terms of technical things. I'm looking at light and I'm looking at composition. And the two things I absolutely abuse are leading lines and subframes. Like
Subframes.
absolutely abuse them.
Subframes.
Like these triangles.
Yeah. We were watching a movie last night and there was a subframe.
Oh my
It was
God.
really
I
good.
lost it. I
And
lost
Twayne
it.
absolutely
I lost it when
He
I
was,
saw
like,
it.
dying of laughter. This was really funny. Basically, there was like a couple that was dancing at prom, and what was the movie called?
Not another teen movie.
Another
And it
teen
was
movie.
the
Lincoln
spoilers.
Mile.
Spoilers.
It was the conjoined twins, and it was like towards the end
Yeah.
of the movie, and there's obviously a triangle, and I was
Well,
like,
you see Chris Evans
like you see his head
like
ducked down,
and then
then
the camera
the shot
follows.
the camera follows, and then you're like, oh, it's blurry, but then it racks focus to another character, and you're
Yeah.
like, bro, whoever thought of that shot
Genius.
in the
Wait, can we show
storyboard,
them?
genius. I could
Genius.
probably throw a clip in,
Probably throw a clip, yeah.
but I was dying when I saw that.
Too funny. That was, but
Yeah, so like
subframes.
But that's
Yeah.
that's just me personally. Like I love leading lines and I love subframes.
yeah.
A lot of my photos, and I also I tend to be more of a dark and down type of photographer. Even if it is a happy scene, I'll find some way to make it contrasty
It's moody.
and moody. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like that also translates to my cinematography style
Right.
too. Like
Yeah.
I love dark and played down stuff and moody stuff. Obviously, it depends on sort of the job, the context, and what's asked of me.
Yeah.
But if I
sure.
can work that in, 100%.
Yeah. Happy but make it moody.
Happy to make it moody. Like,
Yeah,
oh gosh.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't ask me for bright whites and clean
Yeah.
whites.
Yeah. It's gonna be like a happy family photo, but it's like Christopher Nolan like frame.
Yeah.
You know?
It's that center frame of the family. But everything
The lighting's like yeah.
it's backlit, it's moody. It's just
That's so funny. I mean, on that particular note, sometimes you'll show up on set and whatever you're expecting in your mind or whatever gets completely changed because the set looks different,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Your surrounding or wherever you are. Like sometimes clients will take you to a spot and you're okay. Now I have to work with this, and that's where coming in with an open mind works really well because you might not have leading lines, you might not have specific things. But then you kind of have to look at your scene, work with what you have. So if you're going to a shoot and you've got your mind set on specific things, your mind's not going to be open to whatever other possibilities there are.
Yeah. It's crazy how often that's happened to me on a shoot where something changes and I'm like, okay, shit. What do I do? And like
toss the mood board.
Yeah, honestly, like I got a mood board from a client that was like, okay, beach vibes, whatever, and
took you to like a mountain.
No, we went to a beach, but we went to a beach in the city.
Oh, okay.
Like Sugar Beach in downtown Toronto, one of those beaches that are like built into downtown.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like all supposed to be front lit or whatever. But the thing is, there's obviously condominiums and buildings, and like half this beach is like in shadow, and like they don't look well lit. My background's brighter than these guys. I'm like, okay, I have a flash. Let's just try it. Okay, so I put this flash on, and I will tell you, probably some of the best photos I've taken. Like for this beach campaign that I did for this company.
Basically work with what you got.
Yeah, I worked with what I got. I was like, I was prepared. I wasn't sure what the light was like. So I always like chuck 2 strobes in my bag whenever I'm on a shoot. And I'm like, yes, I have that luxury because I own that gear.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I can afford myself the best chance to be prepared, why not?
Yeah.
And like, I took this stunning shot of these 5 girls just sitting on a beach, and this one strobe just lit them up. And my ratios were great. They were a stop brighter than the background, even though the background was front lit. And it looked like they were, out of a magazine. And I was like, huh, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting these shooting conditions, but I had to adapt, right? And I think that's the fun part in it too. Like, it can be stressful, don't get me wrong, but I absolutely just love trying things and seeing what works for the scene. And then of course, if your client's like, well, I don't know, or I don't know how this is gonna look, just tell them like, hey, this is like, based on what you send me, like this is not possible to do based on the environment you've given me here. So this is what I propose instead. And like, it's all come down to like communication, and of course, like you said, making them feel comfortable, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely being prepared, with some situations. Like when you shoot enough, you take notes on, man, like sometimes you ever leave a shoot or something and you're thinking in your head, oh man, like it would have been great if I had a reflector, or it would have been great if I had a little piece of like an LED panel just to throw something in.
Or it would have been great if I had budget.
What?
It would have been great if I had budget.
If I had budget. I mean, that's a whole other
discussion
podcast episode. But I mean, you take mental notes and you're like, okay, it would have been good if I had this. So the next time someone tells you, hey, I want to go to the beach and shoot this. Like I did a shoot recently for a client, and the mood was supposed to be sunset. And the thing is about living in Toronto in the middle of November or beginning of November is that the sun sets pretty early. And
if you have 9-to-5 jobs like us, we can only shoot after work. So
and on top of that, Toronto weather is not like LA. We don't get the greatest lighting, right? We sun or golden hour. Sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't.
It's like 45 minutes, not even an hour.
Yeah.
It's like 45 minutes and the sun's gone. And you're like, well,
here we go. So like knowing that, like I've been on multiple shoots where we try to shoot golden hour, and during those times I'd be like, okay, all right, just giving you a heads up, we might not get golden hour. There's a possibility that it'll be cloudy or whatever. And I knew that going into this shoot that I had done recently. So what did I do? I packed a light that I can use to fake sunlight, had batteries and stuff like that. And that way I was prepared, that way. That's what happened. It got too cloudy and the sun was setting too fast. So I was like, all right, let me try something. So I had a stand, put the light on, set it to like tungsten.
Full power. And then I put it, like I started shaping it as if the sun was there. Yeah.
So when I took the shot, I was like, you got to see this. And she's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, well,
because you worked with a cinematographer like me.
Sir.
Okay, sir.
Tell me I'm wrong though. Actually, I'm a shit cinematographer. Anybody can tell you that. I mean,
no, but that's
Jordan looking at this like.
but that's the thing. I mean, that comes with experience. You learn certain things. You kind of have to keep a mental note and pick that up, and then sort of work that into your workflow. Try to keep that in mind for the next shoot. So
yeah. So John, keep a notebook wherever you are.
Yeah, I tried for this shoot, but I was like,
yeah.
I had an assistant.
Wow, galing. assistant.
Zeik.
That was me.
Yeah. Also, fucking put your lens caps back on, okay?
I did.
Yeah, for the first 3 times you put it on the rear lens element.
Yeah, I looked and I was like, these are my lenses.
Well,
Yeah.
call me
Get
out.
scratched.
Call me
Yeah,
out
I'm gonna call you
for-
out. Don't let this guy bore your gear.
Jonathan Sunio.
This is his Instagram.
Link in bio.
Bye. But yeah, is there anything else you guys want to add?
Are we recording right now?
Yeah, we are.
We are recording.
Yeah, we are.
Yes, we very much are.
Dude, it's been 40 minutes of us recording.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that you've done this shoot
Yes.
and you've heard Twayne and I talk, and, you know, are like, 1, are you planning on doing another shoot after this? 2, what would be something that you're taking from this creative shoot and going into the next one? Like, what's something that you're going to keep in the back of your mind?
Okay, yes, I do plan on doing another shoot. I just don't know what it
Nice.
is.
Slide in his DMs.
Slide.
He's a great photographer.
Thanks, guys.
Wow.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
That hype you up somehow.
A plug. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
We were paid.
Okay, here's the 20.
We actually ordered food. We paid for our lunch today. I'm not gonna lie. So
Yeah,
we're paid. I don't mind plugging you for a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounded so wrong.
Pause. Pause.
Pause.
Hard pause. But yeah, okay, so you are gonna do another shoot.
Yes.
All right.
In terms of what I will bring to the next shoot,
Yeah.
so I've talked to you guys about this before, but having understanding the camera a little bit more and sticking to it, because I learned with this shoot that so basically I do have a Canon camera, but the meter inside shows aperture,
Gross.
not shutter.
Canon, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. So after talking to these guys, I was like, okay, maybe I should switch over to Nikon. And obviously, it's 100% about the photographer, but the gear does help a bit in terms of when you're starting, at least with film, to help. No. The thing is though, so switching over to Nikon, and
Yeah.
we talked about this.
Yes.
Getting a good understanding of the camera and the meter, and camera meter helps a lot, because with this shoot I felt like I was at times a little bit hesitant in terms of how to actually function it, right? This is because this is a new system.
Yeah.
It's not Canon, which I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
And if I end up getting a camera and sticking with it, having a really good understanding and then taking that mindset from what I learned from this shoot into the next shoot, I think will help out a lot more, because I can be extremely comfortable with managing while on the shoot,
Yeah.
instead of being like, hey, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also shows in terms of confidence on the photo shoot. When you're in front of a client, it's like, okay, you're learning, but at the same time, you want to be obviously reputable. You want to be confident in front of the client.
Yeah.
And if it shows time to time you're not knowing what to do, that can happen. You're not sure, but obviously learn from it, and then develop that confidence kind of going forward.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think you want to be as comfortable as possible with your
Yeah.
gear.
Yeah.
And that all depends on what you prefer, how your brain works, right? I
Brain
think-
doesn't work half the time.
Like when you're on a shoot, you'll be surprised. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
The last thing you need to worry about is your gear,
100%.
Yeah.
right? The last thing you need to worry about is, how is this going to work? Is my lens isn't focusing right now? What's going on?
So that's what on a shoot. There's gear itself, lighting, the model,
Right?
the actual environment itself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables. So I do agree. Knowing your camera is
Yeah.
key, and
Probably the biggest thing, actually.
Yeah.
You can't use your camera. You don't know how it works. It's
Yeah. But yeah, the less variables you have on a shoot,
100%.
the more you're able to focus in on capturing that moment.
Yeah.
Or whatever you intended to capture.
Yeah.
yeah.
The moment, the emotion, whatever it is, you don't have that distraction.
And also too, going back to storytelling, it's okay, focusing on emotion as opposed to doing storytelling. If it doesn't really add to the story, then you take it out.
Yeah.
And I was gonna
Sure.
say earlier, okay, if you have a set goal in mind to, let's say, post on Instagram or whatever, and if you just get like say one photo out of it,
Yeah.
at first I was like, okay, like it's deemed not a good photo shoot. But after talking, I was like, okay, maybe it is a good photo shoot because at least I got one photo of it.
And you learn from the
And
rest.
I learned from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
Growth mindset.
Growth
mindset.
Is that the title for this episode?
I guess so.
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset and practice gratitude.
Oh my God.
Practice.
And with that, I thank you for listening to
Yeah.
Inframe pod.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Inframe podcast. This is what, episode 6?
5, 6. We
Episode
forget.
6,
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I mean, there's been a lot going on in our lives, so
Yeah.
hopefully we'll do more of these episodes. We're now in person. We're double vax, which is great. You know, times is
Amazing.
changing. But yeah, thanks for listening in on this episode. Thanks for viewing. If you like, subscribe.
Comment. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts,
Link
or
in
wherever
bio. Link
you
in
get your
bio.
podcasts.
Triangles.
And
Triangle.
we'll see you guys in the next episode.
In the next frame.